Hello, this is Shoshana Burgett from Colorkarma.com. I am here with Ryan Stanley, Senior Director of Color at PVH,
Hello.
and Nick, thank you very much, and Nikki Hiza, Material Developer at UnderArmour. Thank you very much for joining me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for inviting.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about footwear, color, material, and process. And so help us understand, Nikki, how that kind of flow of footwear works at UnderArmour.
Color kind of plays a point into it, but at the same time, the shoe is being designed, the color palette is being created. So design is happening, material selection is happening, and we're putting materials onto the components of the shoe. Once that happens, then color comes in and applies color to the different components. Then we review it and make sure those colors can be applied to those components and those materials. Then we'll get a sample round of the physical shoe, and we'll see if something's working, if something's not working, if we have to change anything. And it kind of trickles down from there to being the final product.
It's a potential area of opportunity, though, right? Like figuring out if a color is achievable on a material after the fact, maybe?
Yeah.
So to understand, though, color sounds like it's later in the design stage.
Colors typically later, yeah, in the design stage.
So what are some of the challenges that happen when color comes that late?
If a material can't take a certain color, if like a leather can't be a bright color, or if a certain whatever material like has to be black or white, like the backing of a synthetic, usually like the supplier will have either a color palette that's kind of just like a basic, maybe like 6 or 10 colors, or only black or white. So color's kind of in it from the beginning-ish, but mostly towards the end.
It's kind of in the beginning where we have an idea, but we don't put it together until the end.
Yeah. So it depends on the materials chosen.
Yeah, so do you typically, I mean, what are some of the challenges you have late in that process where, you know, a supplier comes in and says, well, that's nice, but I can't produce this on that. I can't produce that color on that material. Is that something you hear a lot, see a lot?
Yeah, that does actually come up a lot. If the supplier comes back and says that they can't achieve a certain color, or if they send us like a lab dip, which is kind of like a color swatch of that particular material, if they can't achieve what we're asking for, we either change the color of that piece, we change the material, or we ask the supplier for like an alternative suggestion. So do you have something that's kind of like this but can take that color? So we kind of go back and forth.
That goes into a question I was going to ask. How do you guys manage vendor materials, or vendor colors rather? So like the traditional brand color palette versus a color palette specific to the mill that you're working with and the set of colors that they know they can achieve on that material.
Right.
So we use CSI, and a lot of suppliers use Pantone, but they can match our CSI unless they have a set color palette that like they can only do for a certain kind of material. They can usually match our color palette.
If the vendor cannot meet the color, then they have to change the color, change the material, or find an alternate balance, right? When you change the color material, what's the impact it has to the whole process now for approvals?
It's a style.
You know, if the color of a certain component has to change, like we'll obviously the group will get together, the color designer, materials, sometimes the footwear designer, development, PLM, like we'll do a meeting and say like, who's okay with what? Like, is the designer okay with this component not being like a bright red or something?
Right.
Usually like everybody's pretty easy to work with. If somebody wants that specific component to be like standing out in a certain way that like shows off like this is a function of this material, of this part of the shoe, so we want it to be like emphasized with a bright color or something, then it kind of comes down, keep the color, change the material, or like what are the options.
Right.
So it kind of depends on the situation.
Does it slow you down or increase costs or?
Yes.
Yes, so all the above.
It can definitely increase costs, which is unfortunate. And if that happens, we try to save costs in a different area of the shoe, or if it's like an acceptable amount of like cost increase, then that's okay.
Like when you're developing the materials specifically, do you guys pay attention to what colors can execute on those materials, and or how the surface of the material, like the aesthetic of the material, might impact the color, and then what materials you put together to try to have a level of synergy between the colors, knowing that they might be executed differently?
So it's kind of at the beginning when we get material submits from a vendor, we'll ask it, are there any limitations? Specific, there's a certain test protocol that like if it can achieve a neon color, like a brighter color, if something has to be like a black, or if something has to stay white. So we kind of know like that sort of basic information going into it. But anything more detailed than that, it's kind of like deal with it as it comes.
But footwear, how many pieces are in a piece of in an average shoe?
How many different materials?
Yeah.
The upper, I mean, there could be anywhere from like 10 to 20 or more.
Individual components or different materials?
Both.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, a different material, would be a different component. I mean,
yeah.
You have the vamp, you have the heel, the quarters.
It's a giant jigsaw puzzle made out of different materials.
Mm-hmm. So we'll have a material map, sort of, that's kind of like a general line art sketch of the shoe. And then
when you're developing a material, do you have a particular component of the shoe in mind? Like, I know this is going to be a material that's used for component X on the material, so I wanted to have this kind of a aesthetic or this type of a performance.
Yeah. So for each category, they kind of have different like test score standards. So I'm in outdoor footwear and training footwear, and both of those categories need like high abrasion resistance scores, for instance, much more than like a lifestyle shoe.
Right.
Because you're going to be working out in it, you're going to be, climbing a mountain in it or whatever. So they have to be more durable materials.
Which might directly impact what colors can be achieved on those materials.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cleats have a different need than just a pair of, walking around shoes or clogs or boots, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, and on top of it, if you think about cleats, right, they have not just the abrasion, they have a purpose. They're supposed to stick and get into the dirt, right?
Yeah.
They have they have a functionality to both the shape, the form, the function, and the material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
I mean,
it adds new challenges.
Just like a helmet is. I mean, it's got to protect, like an outdoor shoe has to protect your foot the same way as like a jacket would. I mean, it's got to be, maybe it has to be waterproof. Maybe it has to, I don't know, have like a certain flexibility standard or padding around your ankle or something. It's got to protect you. It's got to have a function. And whatever sport or whatever wherever you're going to wear the shoe has to have, specifics around it.
Do you ever get pulled into issues after the fact? So you work to develop a material, and then either a performance after treatment is put on it, or you find out that a color can't be achieved on it for whatever reason, and then you guys are forced back to the supplier to redevelop a material, or is it just sort of you work it out and get a best can do throughout the process?
So yeah, sometimes we have to go back and redevelop or improve a test score or something. If we have a material on a pallet that can be used for a lifestyle shoe or a different category, and we need it to just be improved like a little bit for whatever purpose, for whatever category, there is some back and forth with our vendors. Sometimes changing the performance qualities of a material completely changes the appearance and hand feel of the
Yeah.
material. So sometimes it doesn't work, which is unfortunate. Sometimes you can use that for the next season or a different category or a different shoe or something.
So it goes into your library.
Yeah, totally.
Gotcha.
How many materials are in your library? Not your home library.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I don't know, thousands. You know, we have hangers of material, which is just kind of sort of like a sheet of paper size. And then we have catalogs, which are binders on the other walls of the library, which have like, you know, an uncountable amount of materials that aren't like
And how
in our system yet.
and during a season, you have how many colors would you typically see on one shoe?
Anywhere from, I mean, we have the monotone styles, so that would be one, up to maybe 6, 10 in that area.
I mean,
Wow.
6 to 10 colorways or 6 to 10 individual colors
colors
Per shoe,
per style. Yeah.
per
colors.
style.
Yeah.
So 6 to 10 colors,
Yeah. Okay, so the number
10 color waves,
Yeah.
up to 20 materials.
Yeah, that's 20 is probably pushing it.
12.
Yeah, I would probably say 12, I would say 15 different materials.
I don't have a
depending on the style.
calculator, but that's a lot of variations across a lot of different things.
Mhm. But
So
there's only a few, okay, so for training, there's
mhm,
only a few colorways per season.
mhm.
So it can be the same material from like spring, summer, or quarter, like Q1 to Q2 in the spring, summer season.
I'd be curious to know adoption of colorways by style. Like how much this is something that you know, we have conversations at PVH, the juggling the number of materials, number of colorways on your style, and then the what is actually selected by whomever, you know, merchant sales to go out onto the floor. So you wind up producing potentially, you know, 2 times the amount of stuff and then only picking a third of it.
Mm-hmm. And some styles get dropped, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So close your eyes and imagine where instead of doing the sketches and then picking the material and then handing it off to color, then handing off to the supplier, imagine if you could, since you're virtually, download a material, wrap it around something digitally, and have it give you a realistic color and material rendering of what it would look like.
So some vendors offer that process. In their catalogs, it's kind of like they'll have like the page with the material, they'll kind of have that sort of image wrapped around a shoe.
Okay.
Some of the styles that we do are physically sampled, and some of the styles are VR sampled. So it is the actual like image of the material wrapped around.
Okay.
So I think it, in a way, could speed up the process because you could see the actual materials digitally next to, you know, with what they're going to be on the shoe next to.
Right.
Although I'm like such a visual person, like so for me, I personally like touching and holding things physically, like, so I prefer to see like a physical sample of a shoe so you can see, does it stretch, is it lofty, is it too smooth, you know, like is it what's going on here, you know. On a digital platform, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes with things like that.
You could potentially have an undyed portion of the material though, right?
Right.
Or like so if you had like a, you know, a physical set of those materials, but they were undyed or they were treated in a particular way, but then digitally you had the ability to see different types of aesthetics or what different types of treatments applied to that material might aesthetically look like, and then apply your colors. Would that be the same, or it's the same? Like you still have to, even if it's different colors, you still want to hold it and touch it?
I still want to see it in person.
So how many times do you go through, how many samples do you physically review physically?
There's the first sample review, we have a second sample review, and then we have a third and final review.
Four.
This is what it is. So it's kind of just like seeing what it is actually going to be. So there's kind of only 2 sample rounds.
Where you have the opportunity to change something.
Yeah. But by the third one, like it should be like, this is what it's going to be. Like this is the actual thing, you know?
Yeah, so I think where Ryan and I are coming at is if you had white material that you could touch and feel and understand the form, I mean, because that's a very tactile piece, right? So I recognize that. But if you could visualize and digitize that color, you know, spot on, where all you needed that was that final, third or fourth piece, then you still have your physical shoe to sign off on, just no different than a proof. You still want that physical proof to take a look at, but you could digitize the whole thing.
Color-wise, I think that's great. Like, I think if whoever's doing that like virtual sampling, if that's true to the material, like what the material can take, I think that's great. For color.
For color, right? Because material has feel, right? You want to make sure the weave, and to your point, there's adhesion and glue and heat and melt points and all these other things with footwear that add complexity to it. Now imagine a different way where even before you start with your ideas, you went to all of those white samples and threw on colors that are achievable on those samples. Would that open your creativity to, oh, I didn't know I could do that on that material, right? Because now if you're virtually applying color, I'm just throwing down no different than Photoshop going, give me that color, make me a new color, show me what I don't see on a screen.
Maybe downstream, but not necessarily in material development. Well, you tell me.
That's why, yeah.
I mean, there's some instances where you go back to the vendor and say like, can you give me a sample of this material in A, B, and C color, which we know is going to be on our palette. So like if there is a material that like is in question or something, so you can see those in person. And then we can keep those in the library for like future reference.
Right.
So
I'm just thinking of creativity of even before you're even picking palettes, you get to tinker and toy very quickly with a digitized color and just apply it onto these different materials to go, can I do this on leather? Can I do this on, this type of material and cotton or lace or rivets or all the other pieces and bits and bobs.
Yeah, I think that could definitely help. I think the more tools available to our footwear designers, like the more fun they can have, the more helpful it could be.
You said fun. Do you think the challenge or one of the challenges is that designers don't think color material is fun when it comes to the development stage?
I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else. I think more projects are more fun. Some projects are more fun than others. I mean,
that's every project, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got, they're not all going to be great games and great projects. You got across the spectrum, but it's more of collaboration, innovation, speed to market, cost.
Yeah.
How do you use the technology to apply it to speed, cost, creativity, innovation, all of those components?
I'm glad you brought that up because cost is a huge, that's like the Grim Reaper, right? It's like you have all these cool materials and like certain colors of a material will sometimes cost more. And then you're like, oh,
it just destroys the style.
You can't do that because it costs too much. Like change this, and it's like, oh, come on.
Does that take into account at the beginning when you're actually developing the material, or is the very beginning when you're developing it a little open, but then after it's okay, they can choose to pick this or not?
Yeah, it's not so much in the very beginning. There's kind of like a general sort of gray area, you know,
Window.
but then like as we have finalized materials, as we have finalized like patterns, you know, if you use like a smaller amount of material, obviously it's going to cost less. So it kind of cost doesn't really have like a finite like answer until closer to the end, which is unfortunate because then we're like super excited about this and then it's like, shoot.
So play that same scenario now. Put the color material all the way up front. You guys go, this is the color we want. It only works on this material. It's more expensive, but we want it. What can we sacrifice now? And again, make those decisions way up front now as a team. And you get that hot pink on that white leather that's coated, or I have no idea. But then you get that, but you've made these compromises in these other materials to achieve the overall vision, right? Can you foresee that happening and having a positive impact?
I think that could be helpful. I think it's always interesting to look at it through a non-traditional way. Like if we're always doing it like design and then materials and then color and then cost, can we switch it up in any sort of way? You know, I think it's good to keep an open mind and look at things if they could be different. You know, how could they be different and how could that help, or would that be terrible?
Find it based on style and requirement. Yeah.
The way you go is it was design, material, color, and cost, and you said cost was the Grim Reaper. It's like cost is mom. We planned the big party, and the mom said no, right?
Yep.
Can we get the parents' buy-in at a time, and then maybe you can invite all your friends to the party?
Don't tell the costing team we said that.
Well, Nikki, thank you so much for the chat. All that's left of you in these late hours is the sad fire glow on your face.
Yeah, well, it's all the
fires. Yeah.
I'll send you guys a picture of what it actually looks like because it is. I've never seen anything like this. I don't know.
Be safe. That's insane.
Yeah, be safe. Be safe. Thank you so very much. On the side note, I will send you some material to make some shoes out of. Have fun.
Yes, that makes me very excited.
I will send you that. Ryan and Nikki, thank you so much for just another chat. And again, just sharing and figuring out how to do it better, faster, cheaper, and brighter and more colorful.
Yeah.
And have more fun.
I love it.
Thank you.
Have more fun.
It's really fun.
Bye, guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye.